My younger brother was a screw-up. Everyone knew it. So when he crashed into a Mercedes driven by a wealthy businessman who claimed Owen ran a red light, everyone, including our parents, assumed he was guilty. I was a corporate lawyer who'd spent years cleaning up after Owen's mistakes, and even I had doubts. But something in his eyes made me take the case. Everyone said I was throwing away my career to defend the indefensible. Then I found the dashcam footage and couldn't believe the truth. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love stories about family loyalty, fighting for truth, and second chances, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now, let me take you back to the phone call that changed everything. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. I was in my apartment, deep in sleep after a 16-hour day at the firm, when my phone started vibrating on the nightstand. "Lewis Perry?" I answered groggily, assuming it was a work emergency. I was a senior associate at Whitman & Cross, one of Boston's most prestigious corporate law firms, and 2 a.m. calls weren't uncommon. "Mr. Perry?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Officer Martinez with the Boston Police Department. Your brother Owen Perry has been in a car accident. He's at Massachusetts General Hospital. He's stable, but you're listed as his emergency contact." I was instantly awake. "What happened? Is he okay?" "He has some injuries, broken arm, possible concussion, but he's conscious and stable. However, there are some complications with the accident. You should come down here as soon as possible." Complications. That word in my experience was never good. I threw on clothes and drove to the hospital, my mind racing. Owen, my 26-year-old brother, the perpetual disappointment of the Perry family. The one who dropped out of college twice, cycled through a dozen jobs, and generally seemed allergic to responsibility. We'd never been particularly close. 6 years separated us, and those years might as well have been decades. I was the golden child, scholarships, law school, partnership track at a major firm. Owen was the problem child, the one our parents worried about, made excuses for, bailed out repeatedly. I'd bailed him out too, more times than I could count. Legal advice for a lease dispute, money for rent when he'd been fired, a character reference for a court appearance after his DUI 3 years ago. Each time Owen had promised to do better, and each time he'd disappointed everyone again. So when Officer Martinez said complications, I assumed Owen had done something stupid, again. I found him in the emergency room, his left arm in a temporary cast, a bandage on his forehead, looking pale and shaken in a way I'd rarely seen him. Owen usually had a cocky confidence, even when he was in trouble, but tonight he looked genuinely scared. "Lewis," he said when he saw me, "thank God, I need you to listen to me. I need you to actually believe me this time." "What happened?" "He was driving home from work." "You have a job?" I couldn't keep the surprise out of my voice. "Yes, I have a job," he said, with a flash of the old defensiveness. "I've been working at a warehouse for 3 months, night shift. I was driving home on Commonwealth Avenue when this guy in a Mercedes ran a red light and T-boned me." "Owen, I know what you're thinking. I know what everyone is going to think, but Lewis, I swear to God, I had the green light. I was going straight through the intersection, completely legal, and this guy came out of nowhere and slammed into my passenger side." I studied my brother's face, looking for the tells I'd learned over years of his lies and half-truths. The way his eyes would shift away when he was making something up. The slight defensive tone in his voice when he knew he was in the wrong. But Owen was looking directly at me, his expression desperate and sincere. "The other driver says you ran the red light," I said carefully. "The police report says you're at fault." "He's lying! Lewis, he's lying! And there are 2 witnesses who are backing up his story, but they're wrong, or they're lying too. I had the green light. I know I did." "Owen, you have a DUI on your record from 3 years ago. You understand how that looks, right?" "I wasn't drinking tonight. I haven't had a drink in 2 years. I go to AA meetings every week. You can check my phone. I've been sober." This stopped me. Owen had gone to AA after his DUI, but I'd assumed it was just for show, to satisfy the court requirements. "You've been going to AA for 2 years?" 26 months, because I knew that if anything ever happened,
If I ever got in any kind of trouble, everyone would assume I was drunk or high or being reckless. So I've been so careful, Lewis. I drive the speed limit, I stop at every sign, I signal every turn. I've been trying so hard to prove to everyone that I've changed." There was something in his voice that made my chest tight. Not the usual deflection or excuses. Genuine pain. "Who's the other driver?" I asked. "Some rich guy, Graham Holt. He was in a Mercedes, and he's already got a lawyer here threatening me. The cops believe him because he's respectable, and I'm me, the screw-up, the kid with a record." Before I could respond, a man in an expensive suit approached our curtained area. He was probably in his 50s, with the kind of polished appearance that screamed money and power. "Mr. Owen Perry," he said, not waiting for an invitation to enter. "I'm Richard Graves, attorney for Mr. Graham Holt. I wanted to inform you that my client will be pursuing full damages for this accident. Your reckless driving caused significant damage to his vehicle and resulted in injuries that will require ongoing medical treatment." "I wasn't reckless," Owen started. "Save it for court," Graves interrupted. "My client has 2 witnesses who saw you run a red light and strike his vehicle. The police report supports this. The traffic camera footage, while somewhat unclear on light colors, clearly shows your vehicle striking his. We have an airtight case." "Get out," I said, stepping between Graves and Owen. "My brother has legal representation, and you're not to speak to him directly again. Any communication goes through me." Graves raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Lewis Perry, attorney at law. I'll be representing my brother in this matter." It wasn't until the words were out of my mouth that I realized I'd just committed to something I hadn't actually decided to do. But Owen's face when I said it, the flash of hope, of relief, of someone who had been drowning, finally seeing a lifeline, made it impossible to take back. "I see," Graves said, his smile condescending. "Well, Mr. Perry, I look forward to seeing you in court. My client is seeking $500,000 in damages, plus costs. Your brother's insurance, I assume, will not cover that amount. I trust you will advise him to settle quickly before this gets worse." He left, and Owen grabbed my arm with his uninjured hand. "Lewis, you can't pay $500,000. I don't have anything. I'll lose everything. I'll go to jail. Please, you have to believe me. I'm telling the truth." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and made a decision that would either save him or destroy us both. "Tell me everything," I said, "from the beginning, every detail you remember." Over the next hour, while we waited for Owen to be formally discharged, he told me his story. He'd been driving home from his warehouse job at around 2 a.m. He was going straight through the intersection of Commonwealth Avenue and Clarendon Street when he saw a Mercedes approaching fast from his left. The light had been green for at least 5 seconds. He was sure of this because he remembered looking at it, being extra careful because of his history. The Mercedes didn't slow down. It ran the red light and slammed into Owen's passenger side, spinning his car and sending him into a mailbox. Owen's airbag deployed, and he was dazed for a moment. When he came to, he pulled his car forward slightly to get out of the middle of the intersection, then put it in park and got out to check on the other driver. That's when Graham Holt started screaming at him. He was immediately aggressive, Owen said, yelling that I'd run a red light, that I'd destroyed his car, that I was going to pay for this. 2 people, I guess they were waiting at the corner for the crosswalk, came over, and Holt started telling them his version that I'd run the light, that he had to swerve to avoid hitting me worse, all of it lies. And they just agreed with him, like they'd been there, like they'd seen it. "You're sure you had the green light?" "Owen, I swear on everything. I had the green. I had it for several seconds. I watched him run the red and hit me." The next morning, after a few hours of sleep in my apartment, I went to the firm and requested an immediate meeting with the senior partners. I explained the situation and asked for a leave of absence to handle my brother's case. The response was not positive. Lewis, you're up for junior partnership next year. This is not the time to be taking on pet projects. This isn't a pet project. This is my brother. Your brother with a DUI record who ran a red light and hit a Mercedes driven by Graham Holt, who, incidentally, is a major client of Morrison & Black, one of our biggest competitors. You want to take time off from your caseload, your very important corporate caseload, to defend what sounds like an indefensible case? My brother says he's innocent. And you believe him? The skepticism in her voice was clear. I'm starting to, yes. Margaret exchanged a look with the other partners. Lewis, be realistic. You have a promising career here. Don't throw it away on family loyalty to someone who's repeatedly demonstrated poor judgment. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for people we love is let them face the natural consequences of their actions. He didn't do this. Then hire him a competent attorney, but don't derail your own career to play hero. I left the meeting with my leave of absence reluctantly approved, but with a clear understanding that my partnership prospects were now in jeopardy. My parents had a similar reaction when I called to tell them what I was doing. Lewis, please think about this, my mother said. Owen has lied to us so many times. Why are you so sure he's telling the truth now? Because I looked him in the eye, and for once I didn't see deflection. I saw terror. Mom, he's been sober for 2 years and never told us. He's been going to AA meetings. He's been working steadily. What if he's actually been trying and we've all just been waiting for him to fail again? Honey, even if he has been trying, that doesn't mean he didn't make a mistake. People can be sober and still make bad decisions behind the wheel. What if he's innocent and we all abandoned him because we were too ready to believe the worst?
There was a long silence. Do what you think is right, my mother finally said. But Louis, please protect yourself. Don't let Owen drag you down with him. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment and wondered if everyone was right. Was I being an idiot? Was I risking everything for a brother who'd proven himself unreliable time and time again? But then I remembered Owen's face in that hospital room. The desperate hope when I'd said I'd represent him. The way he'd said, I've been trying so hard to prove to everyone that I've changed. What if he had changed, and no one had noticed? I pulled out the police report and started reading. The accident had occurred at 2:14 a.m. at the intersection of Commonwealth Avenue and Clarendon Street. The investigating officer had interviewed 2 witnesses, a Mr. James Tucker and a Miss Sarah Vance, both of whom stated they'd been waiting to cross the street when they saw Owen's vehicle run a red light and collide with Holt's Mercedes. The traffic camera footage was available, but according to the report, inconclusive regarding traffic light status due to angle and image quality. The physical evidence, paint transfer, vehicle damage patterns, was consistent with a T-bone collision, but didn't definitively prove who had the right-of-way. Graham Holt's statement was clear and confident. He had the green light, was proceeding through the intersection when Owen's vehicle suddenly appeared, running the red light. Holt claimed he'd tried to brake, but couldn't avoid the collision. Owen's statement, given while still somewhat dazed at the scene, was less clear. He'd said he had the green light, but the officer had noted that Owen appeared confused and possibly impaired, though a breathalyzer test had shown 0 alcohol in his system. On paper, with witnesses supporting Holt and Owen's past DUI, it looked open and shut. Owen was at fault. But good lawyers don't just read reports. They investigate. I started with the intersection itself. I drove there and parked, studying the traffic patterns, the signal timing, the sight lines. The intersection was busy even at 2 a.m. Commonwealth Avenue was a major road, always active. I walked to where the witnesses claimed they'd been standing. From that position, you had a clear view of the traffic signals. If Tucker and Vance had been there, they would have been able to see which light was green, which meant either Owen was lying or the witnesses were. I looked up their addresses in the police report and did some basic research. James Tucker worked as a property manager for Holt Corp Properties, Graham Holt's real estate company. Sarah Vance was employed as a bookkeeper for another Holt Corp subsidiary. Both witnesses worked for the man who was suing my brother. That didn't necessarily mean they were lying. They could still be telling the truth, just happened to work for Holt and happened to be at that intersection at 2 a.m. But it was suspicious enough to dig deeper. I requested the traffic camera footage from the city and hired an accident reconstruction expert, a retired police investigator named Frank Delgado, who'd worked hundreds of crash scenes. The footage arrived first. I watched it frame by frame on my laptop, trying to see what the police report had called inconclusive. The camera was positioned to capture the flow of traffic, not specifically the traffic lights. I could see Owen's car approaching the intersection from one angle, Holt's Mercedes from another. The collision was visible, a sudden impact, Owen's car spinning, coming to rest against a mailbox. But the traffic lights, the angle was small, the image quality made them blurry. I couldn't definitively say which one was green.
Frank Delgado arrived at my apartment 2 days later with a laptop full of software and 3 decades of experience. "Show me what you've got," he said. We spent 4 hours going through everything: the police report, the photos of the vehicles, the traffic camera footage, the physical measurements of the intersection. Frank made notes, took screenshots, ran calculations. "Okay," he finally said. "Here's what I can tell you. The damage patterns on both vehicles are consistent with your brother's story and with Holt's story. A T-bone collision like this could happen either way, if Owen ran the light or if Holt ran the light. The physics don't give us a definitive answer." "So we have nothing?" "I didn't say that. I said the physics don't give us a definitive answer, but there are some interesting things here." He pulled up an enhanced frame from the traffic camera. "Look at Holt's vehicle just before impact. See how he's not braking? If he had the green light and saw your brother running the red, he should have been hitting his brakes hard. Instead, his speed appears constant, like he wasn't expecting to have to stop. Could he have been distracted? Maybe. Or maybe he was running a red light and didn't expect anyone else to be in the intersection. Can you testify to this in court?" "I can testify that the evidence is consistent with your brother's account, but I can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. A good lawyer could tear apart my testimony by saying Holt simply didn't have time to react. This case is going to come down to the witnesses." I interviewed James Tucker first, meeting him at a coffee shop near his office. He was in his 40s, nervous, kept glancing at his phone. "Mr. Tucker, can you walk me through what you saw the night of the accident?" "Like I told the police, I was waiting to cross the street at the corner of Commonwealth and Clarendon. I saw the car, your brother's car, run the red light and hit the Mercedes. It was clear as day." "What were you doing at that intersection at 2 a.m.? "I'd been working late, walking home." "Your home is in the opposite direction from your office, according to the address you gave police?" Tucker shifted uncomfortably. "I'd stopped for a drink first, at a bar." "Which bar?" "I don't remember the name, just someplace." "Mr. Tucker, you work for Holt Corp Properties, correct?" "Yes, but that has nothing to do with—" "And your boss, Graham Holt, was the driver of the Mercedes." "Look, I know how this looks, but I'm telling the truth. I saw what I saw." I pressed him for another 20 minutes, but his story didn't change. It was too consistent, actually. He used almost the exact same phrases as the police report, as if he'd memorized a script. Sarah Vance's interview was similar. Same nervous energy, same perfectly consistent story, same employment connection to Holt. "Were you and Mr. Tucker together at the intersection?" "No, I didn't even know he was there until after the accident." "But you both happened to be at the same intersection at 2 a.m., both working for the same company, and you both saw exactly the same thing?" "Yes, because that's what happened." After the interviews, I sat in my car outside Vance's building and called Owen. "Your witnesses are both on Holt's payroll. They're lying, I'm sure of it, but I can't prove it. And a jury is going to hear 2 respectable employed people versus 1 guy with a DUI record. We need more." "What kind of more?" "I don't know yet, but there has to be something.
Security cameras from nearby businesses, other witnesses, something that proves what really happened.
For the next week, I became obsessed with that intersection. I went back at different times of day, studying it, looking for any angle I'd missed. I went to every business within a 2-block radius, asking if they had security cameras that might have captured the intersection. Most had cameras that pointed at their own entrances, not the street. 2 businesses had cameras with a view of the intersection, but neither was recording at the time. They'd been turned off for maintenance or had been on a loop that overrode itself every 24 hours. I was running out of options and running out of time. The case was set for trial in 3 weeks, and without new evidence, we were going to lose. I was watching the footage again when I noticed something I'd somehow missed before. In one frame of the traffic camera footage, barely visible in the background, was a white delivery truck stopped at the red light on the perpendicular street. It was there for just a few seconds before the light changed and it drove through the intersection. Delivery trucks often had dash cams. I zoomed in on the image as much as I could, but the resolution was too poor to read any company name or identifying information on the truck. It was just a white box truck that had been at the right place at the right time. I spent the next 2 days doing something that felt increasingly desperate. I contacted every delivery company that operated in the Boston area: FedEx, UPS, Amazon, plus dozens of smaller local companies. I sent the same email to each one explaining that I was looking for a truck that had been at a specific intersection at a specific time, asking if they could check their records. Most didn't respond. Several said they couldn't help for privacy reasons. A few checked, but said they had no trucks in that area at that time. I was about to give up when I got a response from a company called Quick Ship Logistics, a mid-sized regional delivery service. "Mr. Perry, I checked our GPS logs and we did have a truck at that intersection at the time you specified. Driver was Mike Santos. Our trucks have front-facing dash cams, but I need to check with our legal department before I can release any footage. Can you provide documentation of your request?" I sent them everything: my bar number, a letter explaining the case, a formal request for evidence. 3 days later, they responded. They would need a subpoena to release the footage. I filed for the subpoena immediately. Richard Graves, Holt's attorney, fought it, arguing that the footage was irrelevant and that I was on a fishing expedition. The judge granted my subpoena anyway, noting that any video evidence from the scene was potentially relevant. 2 weeks before trial, I received a thumb drive in the mail from Quick Ship Logistics. I plugged it into my laptop with shaking hands. The video file was time-stamped 2:13:47 a.m., 23 seconds before the accident. The dash cam showed the view from the truck's position, stopped at a red light on Clarendon Street, perpendicular to Commonwealth Avenue. It had a wide-angle lens, capturing not just the road ahead, but the intersection to the truck's right. I watched, my heart pounding. At 2:14:03, the traffic light for Commonwealth Avenue, the light that governed Owen's Lane, turned green. Crystal clear on the video, green light. Owen's car entered the intersection. He had the right of way. 3 seconds later, Holt's Mercedes appeared from the left, running what was clearly a red light on the cross street. The collision happened exactly as Owen had described. Holt T-boned Owen's passenger side, sending his car spinning into the mailbox.
And then, this was the part that made my blood boil. Holt's Mercedes reversed a few feet, repositioning itself to make it look like Owen had hit him. The dashcam had captured everything. The truth, unambiguous and irrefutable. I called Owen immediately. "I found it. I found the proof. You were telling the truth." His voice broke. "You believe me?" "I always believed you," I said, "and realized it was true. I'm sorry it took me so long to find the evidence to prove it. Louis, He was crying now. Thank you for not giving up on me." The trial was scheduled for a Monday morning. I arrived early, the dashcam footage loaded on my laptop, ready to destroy Graham Holt's carefully constructed lie. Richard Graves approached me in the hallway outside the courtroom. "Perry, my client is willing to settle. We'll drop the damages claim if your brother agrees to split the insurance costs 50-50. It's a generous offer. Your client is a liar and a fraud, and I'm going to prove it in about an hour. Tell him to enjoy his last moments of respectability." Graves's confident expression faltered. "What are you talking about?" "You'll see." The trial began with Graves presenting his case. The police report, the witness testimony from Tucker and Vance, the traffic camera footage that he claimed showed Owen at fault. Tucker and Vance both testified, repeating their practiced stories. Then it was my turn. "Your Honor, I'd like to introduce new evidence that was recently obtained through a subpoena. This is dashcam footage from a delivery truck that was stopped at the intersection at the time of the accident." I played the video for the court. The clear green light for Owen, the red light runner, Holt's Mercedes, the collision, the reversal. The courtroom was silent. Tucker and Vance's faces went pale. Graham Holt looked like he'd been punched. "Your Honor," I said, "this video clearly shows that my client had the legal right of way, that Mr. Holt ran a red light, and that Mr. Holt's subsequent repositioning of his vehicle was an attempt to obscure the truth of what happened. Furthermore, both witnesses who testified against my brother are employees of Mr. Holt's company, and their testimony directly contradicts this video evidence." The judge watched the video 3 times. Then he looked at Holt and his attorney with an expression of cold fury. "Mr. Graves, your client has committed perjury in my courtroom. I'm dismissing all claims against Mr. Owen Perry with prejudice. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for investigation into possible witness tampering and insurance fraud. Court is adjourned." Owen grabbed me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "You did it! You actually did it!" "You did it," I corrected. "You told the truth, and you didn't back down even when everyone, including me at first, doubted you." As the courtroom cleared, a bailiff approached. "Mr. Perry, the judge would like to see you in chambers, you and your brother." In the judge's chambers, District Attorney Helen Morrison was already waiting. She'd been observing the trial. "Mr. Perry, I'm opening an immediate investigation into Mr. Holt and his witnesses. I need to ask, do you have any theories about how this conspiracy occurred?" "I do, actually," I said. I pulled out my phone, showing her the research I'd compiled. Both witnesses work for Holt's company. James Tucker is a property manager, Sarah Vance is a bookkeeper. I believe Holt called them after the accident and instructed them to come to the scene and claim they'd witnessed it. Can you prove that?
Check their phone records from that night. And check the traffic camera footage again. You'll see both Tucker and Vance arrive at the intersection several minutes after the collision occurred. They weren't witnesses to the accident. They were witnesses to the aftermath. D.A. Morrison made notes. "We'll subpoena phone records and review all footage. If you're right, we're looking at conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, witness tampering." Outside the courtroom, our parents were waiting. They'd come for the trial, though I'd sensed their attendance was more obligation than expectation. "Lewis was right," my father said to Owen, his voice thick with emotion. "We're sorry, son. We should have believed you." Owen wiped his eyes. "I gave you all plenty of reasons not to. I get it. But Lewis," he looked at me. "Lewis believed me when it counted." That evening, Owen and I sat in my apartment, drinking coffee and talking in a way we hadn't since we were kids. "Can I tell you something?" Owen said. "When you said you'd represent me in the hospital that night, it was the first time in my entire adult life that someone in this family chose to stand with me instead of writing me off. It made me want to be worthy of that faith. You were always worthy of it. We just didn't see it." "No, Lewis, I wasn't. I was a screw-up. I made terrible decisions. I hurt people who loved me. I deserved the doubt." He paused. "But when you believed me,
when you risked your career and your reputation to defend me, even though my track record said you shouldn't, it was the first time I really understood what it meant for someone to love you, not because you've earned it, but just because you're family. I'm sorry it took me so long to show you that. Don't be. You showed me when it counted most. 6 months later, Owen was still working at the warehouse, but he'd been promoted to shift supervisor. He was still going to AA meetings, still rebuilding his life one day at a time. We had dinner together every week, really talking, really connecting as brothers for the first time in our adult lives. And me? I'd returned to the firm, where my temporary reputation as the guy who took on a losing case and won had actually enhanced rather than damaged my career. I'd made junior partner on schedule. But more importantly, I'd learned that belief, the kind of unconditional, unreasonable belief that says, I choose to trust you, even when the evidence suggests I shouldn't, is the most powerful gift we give to the people we love. Owen had been telling the truth. But it wasn't the dashcam footage that saved him. It was the fact that for the first time in his life, someone believed him enough to look for that footage in the first place. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for family isn't fixing their problems or bailing them out of trouble. It's simply believing in them when no one else will, and trusting that belief to be stronger than their mistakes. That's what changed everything. Not the evidence I found, but the faith I showed while I was looking for it. What did you think of Lewis's decision to risk his career to defend his brother when everyone said he was guilty? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about family loyalty, fighting for truth, and the power of belief touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next thought-provoking tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.